So like, what is going on for me this entire year or this particular month that can help me get into the healthier aspects of my chart erotically, right? Like sometimes you'll be, like if you have a Venus return or you're having a Mars Venus conjunction, like, or so, like, Mars is on your Venus. Like there are all these different times in your life, some that happen often, regularly, cyclically, some that happen less often, that can help you to sort of like wake up that part of yourself.
Hey everybody, we are here with a fun episode today on sex and astrology. I've actually been wanting to do an episode about this, so I was very excited that our guest is available today. So Stefanie Iris Weiss is a clinical sexologist, sex coach, astrologer, and writer. Her daily and monthly horoscopes have appeared in print and online for Teen Vogue and Elle UK. And her bylines have appeared in Elle, Allure, Marie Claire, Bustle, and many more. She's an on-call astrology and sexuality expert for Well and Good and writes a monthly horoscope column on Substack called On the Erotic Ecliptic. Ooh. For more info, go to StefanieIrisWeiss.com, and we'll also link that in the show notes. So welcome, Stefanie. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So before we hit record, we were just talking about like, okay, where do we want to, jump in and stuff. And, Stefanie was asking me about just my background with astrology and any experience. And I am someone who thinks it's pretty accurate, but I know that a lot of people feel like, they just say the same thing to everybody, or it's so vague, it could apply to anyone. So what do you have to say to that, Stefanie?
I have to say that, yes, astrology has gotten a bad reputation because of that. And, and look, I have written a lot of horoscopes in my life. So when done correctly, they can be actually quite helpful. But yeah, you share your sun sign with everybody born in a particular month, right? This is what we hear online, like Aries season, Gemini season, right? Right. From like, approximately the 20th or 21st of each month to the next month, we're in a particular sun sign, which is the same thing as like, hey, baby, what's your sign, right? Like that's the same thing. So that can be quite sort of like general, right? And doesn't tell you so much about your, the full breadth of your personality, your psychological makeup. But if you know the exact time of your birth, you can get super deep and an incredibly detailed, chart with thousands of permutations that, I do hour-long sessions with my clients when I first meet them. There's no way, even in 1 hour, we could learn everything there is to know.
Which I think is so cool, that much information is there.
Yes. I've been doing this for 20 years and for the rest of my life, I will never be able to learn everything there is to know about this ancient art, which is, goes back, many millennia, and has a grounding also in modern psychology as well. You can look at it from, all these different lenses. So go ahead.
I think that's true. And I mean, I'm a big believer that I'm very holistic. And so I'm a big believer that everything is connected. It's like we are part of our context. And I think sometimes we just get so like zoomed in on life on Earth that we forget that part of our context, part of the interconnectedness is the cosmos.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to describe it. Yes, it is the most holistic, I think, way of understanding our, our desires and our interests and who we are and our blocks and our issues, because it does, it encompasses the entire universe.
Yeah.
The solar system, at least.
Right. Like the real macro context. Although really, there's like a bajillion galaxies. I've actually been learning more about astronomy and I'm like, it's like mind blowing.
It is, yes, endless.
Yeah. But anyways, we'll keep it a little bit simple for people today. We'll try not to like blow your mind too much, but just a little bit. And so you wrote this awesome new book, Sex and Your Stars. And one of the things you just mentioned before we started recording was kind of getting a little bit deeper with the sun sign, because that's what most people know, right? Like the average person might not know their whole chart or even their rising sign and moon, but pretty much everyone knows their sun sign, right?
this is the truth, right? So that's one of the reasons that focusing on the sun, I think, is helpful. But the other reason is, as I've, so it's wonderful. It's absolutely essential to know, if we can, the entire chart and our rising sign and our moon sign and our Venus placement and our Mars placement, which I do go into that in the book. Venus and Mars specifically, and Black Moon Lilith are placements that I do explore. But one thing that I in this research over the last couple of years, and I was sort of moving toward this, even in prior years, is that the sun is so important in sexuality, because it's our vitality. It's the part of us that glows. What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It makes so much sense. I talk a lot about how life force energy is sexual energy.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah.
It's our life force energy. And the thing is, although depending on the nature of our chart, whether we have a day chart or a night chart, or, whatever our chart ruler is, our sun may not be that significant, or it may be experiencing a block. Like you could have a Sun Saturn conjunction or opposition, which could make your sun weaker. And not to get into all of the the nuances of this right now, but if we just look at our sun aspirationally, so like, I'm an Aries sun. So what does an Aries sun want to be sexually? Like, what is it reaching for?
Yeah.
If it was at its best, what can it be? And even more so, and I explore this in each chapter, is like, if an Aries sun has unshamed itself, that's a big piece of it. If it's not holding on to all of the societal shame that people born into Aries bodies typically experience, what can it be at its best?
Right.
What are its erotic gifts?
I love that angle. I think we need more of that angle. We spend a lot of time talking about how we weren't given good sex education, and there's all these conflicting messages and political issues related to our bodily sovereignty. But it's nice to focus on the gifts. So let's get into that. Like, what are some of the gifts of the different sun signs when it comes to sexuality?
Yeah, I mean, I could go through each of the signs. We could do it like that, or we could talk about, you had given me a chart. We could look at that chart.
I volunteered my chart, you guys. Let's maybe do an overview, like briefly, of all the signs, because everyone listening is going to have a different sign, and then we can maybe get into some more of the detail with my volunteered chart, which I'm mostly excited and slightly scared for.
So if we begin with Aries, which is the start of the zodiac, where it all begins, the first sign, the initiator, the pioneer, the one that, often like takes the risks and goes head first without asking any questions. So that is sort of this very primal, animalistic kind of like hunting instinct. That's really the erotic gift of the Aries. And that can be quite complicated for Aries humans born into, for instance, a female body, like, or a person who identifies as a woman, like being that primal and that kind of like, it's kind of like the vibe of like, you go up to someone and you sniff them and you're like, yeah. It's kind of like that.
Is that how you roll stuff? Like watch out, guys. Stephanie might sniff you.
I've been known to sniff an armpit or two. Let me tell you, like, not even really sneaking it, being like. So that's really that's the power of the Aries. So there's a lot of work to do there with unshaming, and being in that primal space without offending anyone or hurting, causing a scene, or being thought of as like inappropriate or too feral or whatever it is that, Aries can get accused of. Male Aries are sort of like allowed to do that more because we live in a patriarchy. So we can talk about that more too.
It's true. Yeah. That could be a whole separate episode, right? But but it's true. So it's like astrology and our gender are intersecting, in terms of socialization.
Yes. I do in certain chapters of the book, specifically the Aries chapter, I speaks specifically to the gender issues there,
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yeah, because it's a thing. I
It
know
is a
from
thing.
very personal experience.
Yeah.
So then Taurus, the erotic gift of a Taurus is sensuality and
Love that.
access. Yeah, like access to the five senses in a way that other signs just don't really have it. Taurus
Mm-hmm.
is an earth sign. And so, this is a sign that when it's at its best could be cool with just sort of like lying in a meadow, doing very little, but being sort of like erotically awakened by even nature. Another topic that I wrote a book about is ecosexuality. I don't know
Oh,
if you've looked at that at all. Really
no,
cool.
so
We might want to do an
interesting.
episode on that at some point. But Taurus is the sign, and Taurus season is the season that sort of vibes with that idea of the erotic in nature, and
Mm-hmm.
slow sex, and sort of like a slow unpeeling of what you desire via your direct contact with your senses.
That sounds
Um,
so great to me. Like, I don't think I have like any Taurus in my chart, but maybe that's why. Like, maybe that sounds balancing to me or something.
Yeah, I mean, Taurus is ruled by Venus. It's the other. So Libra and Taurus are
Oh,
both ruled by Venus, but it's a very
yeah.
different expression of Venus energy.
Okay.
So the Venus energy, at its best, Libra can get there into that sensuality,
Okay.
but they have more unpacking to do because the Libra
Okay.
version of Venus is more about beauty and art and more sort of like intellectualized versions of that, where the
Mm-hmm.
Taurus version is more like of the body immediately, right?
Okay. That makes sense. So I guess it is balancing to me, and maybe that is why it sounds so
Yeah, it's
good.
yes, definitely. It's balancing in that sense for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So then we have Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
As we're recording, we're in Gemini season. So I'm very much
Mm.
like it's very loud right now. And Gemini is an air sign, and like Libra, and
Mm-hmm.
very uh curious, quick-witted, ruled by Mercury. And this is like the sign of sapiosexuality. I think more all
Oh.
the air signs are a little bit, but Gemini the
Yeah.
most. That
Mm-hmm.
sort of deep curiosity about other people's minds. So it's like sex
Mm-hmm.
happening in the brain,
Very mental.
which is where
Yeah.
it happens, right?
Yeah.
And Geminis really get that. And they sort of like, if they can calm their nervous system, which can be hard for them,
Mm-hmm.
they can, really express that like sort of higher ideal of sex begins in the brain. So sex exists in the brain. Sex, the brain is the largest
I
sex
love
organ.
that. I could not agree more. And like part of my assessment with my clients is mental foreplay because we just talk about foreplay as this category and people think of it as like making out and fondling and oral sex. And I'm like, no, we're missing like a whole aspect, people. So I like that Gemini's bringing that in. Thank you.
Yeah. And like, like experts when it comes to flirting, like, really, really
Okay.
good at it.
Nice.
At their highest expression, like when they've done their work, right? Like, so everything that I'm saying about an erotic gift of a sign is kind
Mm-hmm.
of like the context is, you know, when they get there, like, like
Right.
if they're actively sort of pursuing doing their shadow work, right?
Right.
So then we come to Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer is the sign of, like doing that aftercare, like just so beautifully, right? Like nurturing, really being there emotionally for themselves, and then, extending that to lovers, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
really being in the emotional space of sexuality, really experts at that. Able to hold that even in more casual sexual situationships or whatever it is, like really holding space for what are the emotions here, like where is the love, where is the
I
caring.
love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Sounds like
we
a lot
love
of depth.
cancers. And then we come to
uh,
Leo,
okay.
which is
I've
the
heard some things
sign.
about Leo
Oh, you've heard, what have you heard?
that they like the attention and spotlight.
Yes, right. So yeah. So that like right. So we come to sort of like the cliches about each sign, right? Like which are, you know, which have some truth to them, right? If we really examine, but if we really need to go deeper into what that means. Like, so what does it mean when a Leo loves the spotlight? You know, Leo is ruled by the sun, and we were just talking about how the sun is our vitality.
Yeah.
And Leo, you know, glows, right? Like Leo individuals when they're in their, you know, in their heat, right? Like in their in heat or in their heat. We're coming to the second sign so far after Aries that is a fire sign here, right?
Okay.
So when Leos have done their shadow work and they're in good space and they love themselves, what they do is any space that they're in, they take up all the space, like they're in the spotlight. But what they're doing is showing other people how to love themselves when they're at their best.
Love that.
And there's just, you know, often, no matter what, you know, like making space for all different kinds of like compromises that people can have with their bodies, whatever is going on with a Leo, because we all have different situations, right? A Leo, when they've done that shadow work, no matter what's going on with their ability to move around or whatever, are in that vitality and that power of the sun, like making their lovers feel like they too can glow.
And that sounds very sexy.
It's very, oh my God, Leos. Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah. Leos. I tell a story in the book. I tell a couple of personal stories in the book. And one of them is in the Leo chapter about this Leo man, like one of the, you know, like I haven't had a lot of one night stands, but this was like this man who I remain friends with to this day. Met him in a bar, like walked into the bar, saw him across the room, and he was like literally glowing. Like I was like, whoa.
Wow.
And walked over to him and like we were making out within like a couple of minutes. And I was like, what? Who is this? And then, but it was the Leo. It was the Leo that like pulled me in, that glow, that warm glow.
That's amazing. I don't know if it counts as a one night stand if you're still friends, but very fun.
Well, yeah, no, right. It didn't. It seemed like it was going to be a one night stand, but then we remained. Like then we dated a little bit, and then like we were like we're better as friends, and we're still friends. So
that's awesome, though.
Yeah. So that's Leo, right?
Okay.
And so like Leo also like Leo season, like fun time for like praise play and like, you know, complimenting your lover and all that kind of thing. Like you're really
a lot of people like that. Like, oh, good girl. Are you gonna be a good girl for me? Be a good boy for me?
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
So you guys can play with that at home during Leo season.
Yeah. Oh, like you're so hot, you know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. You do that so well. Yeah, that's good. I like the little dirty talk elements, how that can be customized to each sun sign.
Oh, it can be. And by the way, like back to Gemini season, like, you know, that's the really good time to like practice your dirty talk, like experiment with it. Like, cause it's just such a verbal time. It's like a time for writing and speaking.
Love it.
Okay. So moving from Leo to a Virgo. So we're back to now we're at the second earth sign. The first one was Taurus.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So like you saw my chart already. So I have several Virgo placements, but it's not my sun sign. So would like some of these things still pertain to me?
Yes. So the Virgo, I think you had Venus in Virgo. Should we do this now or should we go back to it afterwards?
Normally, I think it shows up. I have like all my planets are in like Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio.
Yes. Oh my goodness. The Scorpio we're going to talk about when we.
I'm sure we will.
Scorpio is like the Scorpio is loud here, but yes, you have Moon in Virgo, Jupiter in Virgo, and Venus in Virgo. They're not quite what we call a stellium. It's a stellium in the sense that they're all in Virgo, but they're not conjunct. They're not like, you know, they're far away from each other in terms of degree.
Okay.
But yes, so what the erotic power of the Virgo is just noticing every detail and
that makes sense.
And you know and also being willing to be of service to a lover in a way that like, you know, Virgos make some of the best lovers because they just pay attention to every detail of what you might want. And the way for a Virgo to get into their own erotic power is to, you know, well, how can I be of service to myself? Like, what
Oh,
are
I
the
like
details?
that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
Of
it's like
my
lean
own.
into the strength in a different way. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And
Okay.
that's like really like, when we talk about like sexual sovereignty, like Virgo
Mm-hmm.
can really be like the purest expression of that, really.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Also, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, sorry, I know. Sometimes there's like a little delay with these things. So with I think you said Jupiter, Moon, and Venus, does that change the description of Virgo for me, or like how it interacts for me,
Yeah.
since
So
it's not my sun sign?
each of these planets are doing a different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and also the house that they're in will tell us even more information
Okay.
about what they're doing, like in what area of life they're doing the thing.
Okay.
So the sign will tell us something, the house will tell us something. Obviously, the planet, it's the expression of the planet itself. And then the
Okay.
other thing we can get information from is like what kind of conversation is this planet having with other planets? So
Okay.
what I talked about initially about the sun, being weak or being blocked, right? So like
Mm.
if your Venus is in a square to Saturn or opposite your Pluto or something like that, this will give your Venus and Virgo a different way of expressing itself, right? And it might
Okay.
have to like learn a different way to be at its best.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, but the Virgo sun in general, it's like this is going to be someone who's going to notice like everything. They sound like they would make a great lover,
Yes, definitely. That's the
like someone
secret
who
of
pays
Virgo.
attention.
Yeah. I mean, with Virgo,
Yeah.
like we come to this idea of like virginity, right? Like that old
Hmm.
kind of like we don't necessarily people in our business don't like
Mm-hmm.
to use that word anymore.
Right.
It can be problematic. But virginity in the sense of the word, in the sense of like the purity of like almost being like the Vestal Virgin, right? Like like this, it's the goddess level of this
Hmm.
energy. It's so sovereign, right?
That's so
That you don't
cool.
even need anybody else, right? Because you really got down all the details yourself.
Good vibes, my other Virgo people out there. Okay, and then Libra's next, right?
Yes, yes, here we are,
Okay.
Libra. So Libra is an air sign, a cardinal air sign. So Libra's opposite Aries. So when we
Mm-hmm.
talked about, now we're getting into this business of the oppositions and the shadow energy between the
Mm.
signs, which I talk about a lot in the book, like the way that Aries can learn from their Libra opposition and the way that Libra can learn from their Aries opposition,
Mm-hmm.
shadow
Mm-hmm.
wise. Like what are my secrets? Like what do I not want to look at about myself? What am I not
Interesting.
recognizing? So with
Okay.
Libra, it's like the advice to Libras is like be a little feral. Don't always be right. You're like Libras are always wanting to be like adjacent to beauty, whatever beauty means to them. And everyone has
Yeah.
different ideas of beauty, but like beauty, aesthetics, like museum pedestal worthy things, right?
Yes. Like perfection. Yes.
Right. The
Yep.
highest expression. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
where Virgo is perfection, Libra is like artistic perfection, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
beauty, the perfection of beauty. It's,
Mm-hmm.
Venus, right? So what Libra, and that is, I mean, in terms of love and sex, like who doesn't want to be around that, right? Like
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Right.
alluring. That's why Libras have very large dating pools, right? Like that's why like everybody falls in love with Libras or like wants to be around Libra. But one of the secrets of Libra is that they tend to, there's really good, often very good at socializing and
Mm-hmm.
talking and like being in community and like, cocktail party
Yeah.
conversation and all of those things. But sometimes what a Libra is doing when they're being so glamorous and and socially astute is that
Mm-hmm.
they're actually like doing that because they're hiding in a way. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be necessarily noticed for any part of them that they think is ugly. So they're kind of like,
Mm.
like let's have this, let's make the environment beautiful. Let's like make the way
Interesting.
that I dress beautiful. Let's make it all so beautiful that like if there's any part of me that's animalistic or too hungry or too desirous, I'm gonna like you're not going to see that because like, look at this beauty. It's magic.
That is interesting because sometimes I feel like I should care more about what I look like. And sometimes I think I do, but I wonder if that's my other placements.
It could be.
But I do relate to the aspect of kind of like I'm good at networking, you know, I feel like people tend to have a pretty good first impression of me, but yeah, there's lots of layers back there, people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and you're a Scorpio rising, right? And you have Mars, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. Okay. But you know, like a little like nugget of this is, so I'm a Libra rising, right? So I'm
cool.
An Aries sun and a Libra rising. So when I'm talking about all of this, like wanting to, you know, be beautiful and be perfect, and like I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm an Aries, like, you know, that's my sun, that's my hunger, that's my vitality. But like sometimes I get stuck in the performance of the Libra stuff. Right.
That makes sense.
And that's another piece of the Libra stuff sexually that I think is important. I mean, and each one of these chapters goes into so many different aspects of this, right? Like I'm just pulling one thing.
And I love how you put exercises in there. And I love how you wrote it in a very like you use like real language. I saw that you like swear it a couple times. I'm like, oh, this is nice. It's just like a real person wrote this book. And, you know, it may have some practical ways to incorporate it and very like intersectional feminist lens. So yeah, there's so many good things about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, you know, the Libra, just the last chunk I wanted to say about the Libra stuff is that one of the challenges, erotic challenges for Libra can sometimes be performative, you know, like in performative sexually, right? Like, so getting so caught up in like wanting sex to be beautiful that they're not really like in their bodies, right? So that's a thing that I want.
Yeah, that is for sure a thing for me. You know, as much as I'm obviously perfect at sex and I'm a sex therapist, because that's how that works, right? I've noticed that. Like, I went to like Tantra Essentials workshop recently, and just noticed I was almost, and this might be the Virgo stuff you were just mentioning too. I was so kind of like trying to be tuned into the other person that I kind of realized how tense I was physically at one point. But that's been something I've had to learn where, you know, my pattern has been like intellectualizing more. But now it does feel so good. And I think it is that maybe like Venus Taurian connection that it feels so good to be back in your body.
Yes, that's great. And, you know, and the other thing that with the astrology, you know, when you start to work with it, like one of the ways that you can, you know, you can do the exercises in the book, you can work with the seasons, which is one of the elements of the book. But like, you know, looking at your own transits, right? So like what is going on for me this entire year or this particular month that can help me get into the healthier aspects of my chart erotically, right? Like sometimes you'll be, you know, like if you have a Venus return or you're having a Mars Venus conjunction, you know, like, or so, like, you know, Mars is on your Venus. Like there are all these different times in your life, some that happen often, regularly, cyclically, some that happen less often, that can help you to sort of like wake up that part of yourself.
I love that. There's just so many ways to learn more about yourself and grow. It's like just a whole nother pathway for people.
Yeah, totally.
Love it.
Totally. So shall we move on to Scorpio?
Let's do Scorpio. Okay. There's so much to say.
So yeah, the other thing that I do in this book is I debunk some of the pop astrology stuff that like, you know, like why do Geminis get such a bad rep? Like I hate that. And Scorpios, like Geminis and Scorpios, like in terms of like astrology internet memes, like get the worst, you know, shit. And so I sort of try to debunk that for
That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
As a Scorpio rising, I'm grateful.
Yes. Well, so not just Scorpio rising, but Scorpio rising with Mars, which is the ruler of Scorpio, the traditional ruler of Scorpio, on the ascendant, conjunct the ascendant by a degree, and also conjunct Uranus. That's what's going on over here.
That's a lot happening.
That's a lot happening in Scorpio. Yeah. Also Mercury in Scorpio. So obviously deep interest in sexuality.
Yes.
Goes without saying. The depths, like not light, but like, you know, right?
Yeah.
You know, and just being able to, I don't know what your journey has been in terms of like when you started doing this work, but like there's a way in which like you can probably get at it right away with people, like get at like helping them right away, and just that comfort with Mars there, right? Like, and you're an authority. I mean, obviously you're an authority because of your degree and because of your work, but like that Mars just like brings this quality of like, this person is powerful when it comes to these deep topics.
Cool. Thank you. I didn't know I was going to be getting extra street cred, Stefanie. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing here, you know?
Love it.
And so, you know, but the thing with Scorpio, it's like a little, talking about debunking, it's a little complicated, right? Because like I say in the book, like, you know, Scorpios are not sex fiends, right? Like, cause that's one of the bad reputations that Scorpio has, right? There can be, and it doesn't have to be the subject of sexuality. It can be other subjects too, but like just people who are willing to go to the absolute depths of something that they're interested in. So like passion is really the key word here. So like, what is the passion, right? Like, so if you're, you know, within a relationship, your passion can be your partner. And when does that become, you know, something obsessive that becomes unhealthy, or one element of the relationship that becomes unhealthy because you just go in it and all the way and like through the middle of the earth to the other side. Like really, like, you know, it is
like
about
really
that
getting in there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you know, Persephone, like it's Pluto. So the modern ruler of Scorpio is Pluto, right? So it's like plunging to the absolute depths and then like rising like a phoenix, you know? So that's like a strong signature in your chart. And so, yeah, did I say, so Scorpios, just for everybody, so not just pertaining to your chart, but for everybody, the erotic power of the Scorpio is sort of this magicianship, right? Like this ability to transform matter, like an alchemical power, right? Yeah. It's Scorpio is a water sign, but you know, we've had, you know, Cancer is the previous water sign. So like where Cancer is, you know, the onrushing and outflow of, you know, the ocean, I liken Scorpio to like a cauldron. You know, I mean, Scorpio season is like, you know, is when Halloween is. So it's like a cauldron of boiling water and like the fire, you know.
I love the drama. This is great.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama with Scorpio.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, like this is what, you know, some of us crave sexually, is like that deep connection, right? And, you know, Scorpio is the kind of sign, like this sign has a reputation of being like a sex fiend and having lots of sex partners. And sure, some Scorpios do, and that's totally okay. But there are Scorpios who could be like, you know, like all I want to do tonight, all night, is just like make out with my partner. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's enough. Let's just do that. And Scorpio season is a time where we can experiment with like, what are the alchemical things that we can do? What can we metamorphose about ourselves and in our relationship to a lover, by just something like simple, you know, like one thing. So that's Scorpio. And then we go to Sagittarius, which is the third and final fire sign. And Sagittarius are like all about the journey, and the discovery. So it's Sagittarius is opposite Gemini. So we talked about Gemini's curiosity and intellectual power, and Sagittarius also has that, but Sagittarius is more like big picture, where Gemini is like data information, right? Like, you know, like what is this tidbit, where Sagittarius is like pulling that all together and telling a story, like around the campfire, right? Like, you know, or like around the, you know, around the fireplace, whatever it is. It's winter now, so maybe it's a fireplace. And Sagittarius sexual power, erotic power, is in like, you know, this just absolute discovery, right? Like, you know, like whereas a Scorpio might be willing to keep it simple, Sagittarius is like, I want to try all the things. Like, I want to try all the things. I want to discover all the things.
that fits, I think, what I know about Sagittarius too. Like they're explorers and like travelers, and it seems like those same qualities carry over to sex, which is cool.
Yes, yes. And I mean, it can be great sexually, right? Like when you're just willing, like they're curiosity driven, people
Yeah.
driven, story driven. Like,
Love
so,
that.
like it's the kind of thing like you could go on a date with a Scorpio, with a Sagittarius, and, maybe you'll start at, like some kind of cool restaurant, and then you'll like
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation with the server, and that'll like, the server will tell you to go to this other place, and you'll end up in this, at this, karaoke bar, and then you're like, go to a sex party. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind
You're
of
like,
thing
who
that can happen
knows?
on a
Yeah.
date with the Sagittarius.
Yeah, sounds like a fun date.
Yeah. And the Sagittarius, challenge is like
Mm-hmm.
sitting with that one thing, like staying with
Okay.
that one thing, right?
Okay.
Like, like staying with that one part of yourself that you need to work on.
Yeah.
Or like, so maybe a lover, like, is stuck in something. Like, are you
Yeah.
willing to be stuck with them and work with them? Or are you going to be like,
Hmm.
trot out on your proverbial horse and like find
Yeah.
something else to
Okay.
do?
That makes sense.
Yeah. So now we come to Capricorn.
Okay.
And so now we're in the winter. We're like, the winter solstice
Mm-hmm.
sign ruled by Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
earth sign, final earth sign of the zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have what, reputationally is much more serious, right? Ruled by Saturn, a
Okay.
little sort of held back. And like, the Capricorn, stereotype as like the CEO, like the person who
Mm.
like wants to make all the money and the success.
Okay.
And there is something about Capricorn that like wants to do it right, right? Like wants to do
Okay.
everything right and wants to do sex right too.
Interesting.
Um
Yeah.
and can get a little caught up in like feeling like if they don't do sex right, like going into a shame spiral about it.
Oh,
And
okay.
sometimes like needing to work on that.
I see that with
Um,
my clients sometimes. Now, this is
yes.
making me feel like I need to get everyone's signs when they sign up with me.
This is something that I actually teach to other to sexuality colleagues. Like I do
Oh,
workshops about
fun.
this, like, like how can we incorporate
Yeah.
astrology into our client work, whether we're, for sex therapists and
Yeah.
for everybody who works in sexuality with clients
Mm-hmm.
actually. And I talk about that in the book a little bit. So
Cool.
it's,
Okay.
in the a little bit in the introduction and a little bit in the conclusion. And I feel like I'm glad you said that, because I feel like therapists and and all kinds of sexuality professionals,
Mm-hmm.
I want them to pick up the book so that they can use it that way, like for their own
Awesome.
lives, but also to work with clients.
Cool. Love
Um,
it.
yeah. Yeah, it can be on your intake form. Like, when's your birthday?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. We wind up
And you
getting
run
their
the
birthday
chart.
anyways.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Um, so okay, where was I? Capricorn. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn are, like the secret of Capricorn that a lot of people don't know is like this, connection to the body, which is really, really profound.
Hmm.
It's an earth sign, and all the earth
Mm-hmm.
signs have this in a way. And if a Capricorns can sometimes have body image issues, but once
Okay.
they like feeling like weakness, or like the body isn't strong, and there isn't
Hmm.
necessarily any real evidence of this, but just like a
Mm-hmm.
sense, feeling some body shame. But once Capricorn really, really works on that, there is like incredible sexual power there.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. And so, and like Capricorns often discover that they're a lot more experimental than they think they are. Like they can think they're
Hmm.
like locked in this box of like, I'm going to do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
there's some
The
queerness there is what
proper
I'm
way or
getting at.
whatever. Yeah.
Right. No matter what the sexuality is or the attraction pattern is, like it can be very easily queered with
Okay.
Capricorn.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, now we come to Aquarius, which is
Mm-hmm.
the third and final air sign,
Mm-hmm.
also ruled traditionally by Saturn, but it's a
Okay.
different expression of Saturn. And so we have in Aquarius the theme of intellectualism, right? With Gemini and with Libra and with Aquarius, very, very strong. Getting stuck in your head is a thing with Aquarius that can be an erotic challenge, like airiness, like being like up here and not down here in the body. A way in for Aquarians, who are like, by the way, like speaking of like, queerness and stuff and like experimental, like Aquarians tend to be really good at that.
Oh, cool.
Like,
okay.
Like it tends to be easier for them to get to than some other signs, people with strong Aquarius signature, even though they're ruled by Saturn. But there can be a protectiveness around the heart, right? So Leo, their opposite sign, like, are like the open-hearted, right? Like all of the signs that I didn't mention this yet, have associations with different body parts. And so Leo rules.
I did see that.
Did you see that? Yeah.
I saw with Pisces and it said feet, and I was like, are they more likely to have a foot fetish?
That is something. Yes. Okay. And attending to, and I talk about this in the Pisces chapter, like paying special attention to Pisces feet, or letting a Pisces pay attention to your feet is actually can be like really powerfully erotic.
Okay, fun.
Yes. So all of the signs have that rulership. I left that out because it's just there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
But for Aquarius, tapping into their erotic power can require being, finding that openness to the heart center. So they're less airy and intellectualized, and more that connects them back into their body.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So Pisces, the final sign of the zodiac till we start at the beginning again, is a water sign, and Pisces is sort of like, so I talked about the expression of water, like, as like the sea in Cancer, the waves flowing, and Scorpio is like, the cauldron. Pisces is like the entire ocean, right? So like,
wow.
The cosmos of the ocean, like, so it, as the last sign, it kind of in some ways encompasses all the signs, right? It's like it's learned all the energy of all the other signs, and it's got all of it, right? And it commingles, and it has no boundaries, and it floats and just sort of like lets itself be taken by the ocean. Cool. It's cosmic consciousness. It's the collective unconscious. It's our dreams. It's all of those things. That's what Pisces is. And Pisces people are, have sort of natural healing abilities with, yes. And like a tendency to though, like immediately, even without necessarily a conversation, discussion, or whatever, like begin that, sort of like meeting a person and begin healing them, like just energetically without even intending to. And that boundaryless thing can be problematic for Pisces. They're not so good at, in relationships, creating boundaries. They tend to cater to everyone's needs. So there's the opposite sign is Virgo here. So like the way that Virgo is of service, right, and attending to the details. Pisces is also of service, but attending to like the entire being and not really paying attention to the details.
Okay.
And it can be exhausting and hard for the Pisces. So like the Pisces,
sounds like it.
Yes. And so the erotic challenge here for Pisces is to put on their own oxygen mask in relationships, right? So like really, make sure that whenever they, in a long-term relationship, to, make sure that they're not caring solely for their partner until they get completely exhausted all the time, and then just sort of tuning out, or their children, or whatever the circumstances are, to really focus on that. Yeah.
I'm thinking of a Pisces going now, and this is resonating.
Yeah. They have to not take on too much.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a ton of sense. I can't believe we got through the whole zodiac. Good job.
We did it.
Now, one of the things, and I know we talked like briefly about Venus and Mars, so if we have time, we can circle back. But I really wanted to ask you about this Black Moon Lilith thing. Like, what is that? How did it get its whole own chapter? Help us learn.
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
So Black Moon Lilith is not a planet. It's a placement. It's basically like, it's I'll just sum it up by calling it like the dark of the moon. It's like it's a place in the solar system where it's the darkest, without getting into like, the weeds here.
So where's mine?
So your Black Moon Lilith, hold on. I don't think, yes, I did want to talk about this because your Black Moon Lilith is in Libra, and it is conjunct your Pluto.
Interesting.
And so you have a Libra stellium. So you have Sun, Lilith, and Pluto all in Libra, but the Sun is kind of far away. Not far away. I mean, it's like, it's within a 10-degree orbit. It's not super close.
Okay.
But your Lilith and your Pluto are conjunct.
Okay.
And what I am absolutely fascinated by this, and this is like I'm having a new astrological discovery. I've worked with Lilith for a really long time, but I haven't done a lot of charts for other sexuality professionals.
Interesting.
And I love doing yours because I also have Black Moon Lilith conjunct my Pluto. What? And I'm starting to think to myself, is this a thing? In like, I mean, it's only 2 charts.
Pretty rare, right?
I mean, rare in the sense that Pluto is very slow moving. So Pluto stays in every sign for a really long time. Lilith stays in each sign for about 9 months. Okay. So, could be a little bit rare, but like this exact conjunction is what's of interest to me. Okay. It's an exact conjunction. I have that too, like within a couple of degrees. So now I'm going to go look at like every sexuality professional.
I want to know too.
Try and be like, do you have Pluto conjunct?
I know.
Yeah. So to give you a little background though of like what Black Moon Lilith is and does, not a lot of astrologers work with it. And I am, as you said, I'm an intersectional feminist. Feminism is extremely important to me in my life and my work, and has been since I was a teenager. Like my first activism thing was reproductive rights when I was very young. So my take on Black Moon Lilith is like the part of our chart where we can experience a lot of sexual shame, but also the part of our chart, like where if we work through it, like this is where we want to fuck up patriarchy. This is where we are willing to take that risk and like throw the table over and experience like the righteous rage against patriarchy in this part of our life chart. Whatever. So there's also like, all of the planets work this way, but like an example with Black Moon Lilith is like, not in a chart, but just sort of like in our lives, right? Like collectively we have the same experience when we're already alive, our charts are established. So Black Moon Lilith, for instance, is at the end of June changing. It's been in Virgo. And it is moving into Libra, and I don't know what's going to happen, but my assumption about what's going to happen with so you're going to have a Black Moon Lilith return, actually, which means that Black Moon Lilith is going to return to, because it's going to go through
where
Libra.
It's going to be back.
Me. And when you have a Black Moon Lilith return, that like wakes up your Lilith, and like you feel that ferocity, which can be really, really powerful. If you're, like awake and alive in your righteous rage all the time, right? Like if it hits you when you're sort of like keeping it all wrapped up, it can be a little bit explosive and uncomfortable. So that's why I encourage people to work with it all the time, right?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But when Black Moon Lilith goes into Libra, which is the sign, as we've discussed, ruled by Venus, associated with women, right? Associated with the feminine and feminisms. I think this is going to be a summer of like whatever happened in 2016, 2017, which was when Black Moon Lilith was there in those years. I don't remember exactly when.
That was not a good time for me.
We had the Women's March, right? What'd you say?
I'm scared now. I said that was not a good time for me, so now I'm scared.
No. Well, that was not a good time for like anyone, really, frankly. Like there are worrisome things about it. There are worrisome things about a lot of things that are coming back from 2016 without getting into the details.
I'm bracing myself.
But the Black Moon Lilith piece, I mean, look at the situation with reproductive rights right now, right? I mean, we lost Roe 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, what is going to happen in terms of abortion rights this summer? I mean, the other thing to know about Lilith, the goddess, right? Like, James Joyce referred to Lilith as the patron saint of abortion, the patron of abortion.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm starting to call it the summer of Lilith, or like hot Lilith summer. I don't know.
So Lilith is like an actual god. Is Lilith like a person or a goddess or?
So Lilith, the goddess, the biblical Lilith, and I talk about all of this history in the book too.
Oh, cool.
The biblical Lilith was Adam's first wife. So the biblical Lilith is the one who's like not in the Bible. She got written out of the Bible, but she was not made from the rib. She was like an autonomous person, and she was like, I'm sorry if I swear here, but she was like, fuck you, Adam. Like, I'm gonna be on top. Like, you're gonna let me be on top, and you're gonna let me have, like experience my, let me experience pleasure and do what I want. And he was like, no, you must obey me, woman. And
whoa.
Yeah. And so he banished her from the garden, and she went to live with demons so she could just like do whatever she wanted. Okay. And then, made Eve out of his rib. So we can, and that's sort of like the story of patriarchy. I never knew this.
I was raised Catholic.
This is just one of many interpretations. And then like, Christianity, like early Judaism and Christianity sort of made Lilith into this demon, right? Who would like eat babies. And all these other things. But, Lilith has been reclaimed by feminists as this powerful force.
Okay.
And Jewish feminists in particular, like developed this. There's a literary journal called Lilith. I think it was created in 1971, which is basically like created by Jewish feminists. Okay. So it's still around, and it's still really, really good.
Cool.
But yeah, that's sort of like the short story of Lilith, which is why, astrologically, as different astrologers over, the decades have been working with that Lilith energy and trying to figure out what it is in people's charts. Lilith seems to be about like the possession of our righteous rage. And as I have worked with it as an astrologer for the last 20 years, working with thousands of different charts and like looking at where Lilith is in people's charts and trying to figure out like what she's doing.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion that I have come to.
So interesting. And is why the black moon? So is like Black Moon Lilith like a constellation in the sky?
Yeah. So this is where it gets a little, I think, too complicated for people. I don't want to like use them.
I ask a lot of questions.
If you wanted to know where your Black Moon Lilith was and you didn't have an astrologer, and you went to astro.com, you would see that there are 3 different things that are called Lilith. Oh. So we want to focus on Black Moon Lilith, not the other Liliths, because I'm speaking of, the other Liliths there's an asteroid Lilith, right? Like, so the other Liliths could have to do with the same themes, but the one that I have studied most is the Black Moon specifically.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, this whole thing is so fascinating. Yeah. Is there anything else crazy from my chart that stands out, or maybe not crazy, but just interesting?
In terms of, I'm just thinking about you because I didn't know you before today. And so I was just like thinking of you as a sex therapist with the podcast. One of the things, so I was trying to draw out like, what are the things that tell me that this person is a sex therapist, right? So that Lilith Pluto conjunction, yes, because we both have that, right?
That is pretty interesting.
And your Venus is square your Mars. So very often people who have Venus Mars aspects, so like in various ways, whether your Venus and your Mars are in a harsh aspect, which is a square here or an opposition, or they're in, an easier conversation, which would be a trine or a sextile. We often find these placements in people who are very interested in sex in some way, more than the average Joe or Jill.
Makes sense.
I have an exact sextile in my chart between Venus and Mars. So, like I'm obsessed now with like doing the charts of other sexuality professionals because I wonder if we're going to find these things in all of them.
I'm sure I could like send more your way if you're like doing a study on this.
Yeah, totally. I would love people to reach out to me for that.
Okay. Yes, it is. It's really fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I'm excited for people to check out your book. And hopefully pre-order it because that's always helpful and important. So can you tell people like how can they find it and where should they go?
Yes. So Sex and Your Stars will be available on July 30th. That's when you would be able to receive your copy that you hopefully pre-ordered. You can get it from all your regular retailers. It's my publisher is Sounds True. There will be an audiobook, which I recorded myself and had a lot of fun doing. When I did that, like after I did that, I was like, maybe I want to do like audio erotica. Like I really enjoyed that experience.
I totally auditioned for that once, but I was not selected. I might try again.
Totally. You can find it at my website, StefanieIrisWeiss.com. Stefanie is spelled with an F, not a PH. Some people are confused by that. So it's S as in Sam, T-E, F as in Fran, A-N-I-E.
Yeah.
Iris like the flower, Weiss, W-E-I-S-S. StefanieIrisWeiss.com. I have a link there where you can automatically go to all your different retailers to pre-order it. I am actually offering 10% off all readings for people who pre-order and show me their receipt.
That's a nice offer.
Yes, and also entry into a raffle to win a free reading. So you can do both. If you pre-order, you can potentially get a free reading.
Okay, love this. That's
a
great idea.
And you can find
awesome. And can people book readings?
Center.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You go ahead. Sorry.
Can people book readings from your site too?
Yes. You can. It's under stars, which is how you can book a reading. And I would encourage people. I have limited spaces in my schedule just to make space for writing and other stuff that I do. However, if you go on there and you don't see a space, just reach out to me directly, like email me, contact me, message me on one of the apps, on Instagram or Twitter. Instagram, I'm StefanieIrisWeiss.com. Twitter, I'm Ecosexuality. I can receive DMs, I think in both places, maybe not Twitter. But
we'll link to your Instagram and your website just to kind of give people sure bets.
Yeah. Instagram and the website are the two best places. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Totally. So those will be in the show notes. So if you're like, I don't remember how to spell any of this, just scroll down and click.
Excellent.
Yeah. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Stefanie. This was like a real pleasure. And I feel like I learned some things and I love the idea of incorporating it into my work too. So if y'all work with me, you might get a little bit of this too.
Amazing. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Ask a Sex Therapist podcast. Got a question about spicing things up in the bedroom? Find the answers you're looking for in my Dirty Talk Guide, a free resource for my podcast listeners. Grab yours now at heathershannon.co/dirty talk. Again, that's heathershannon.co/dirty talk. And be sure to tell your partner or friends because everyone has something they would like to ask a sex therapist.